critical thinking.
Yeah, I think that critical thinking aspect, we've talked a lot about how it plays out in sessions. Do you all mind if we like quickly shift to outside of session spaces? Because if we think about like parallels in life and in therapy and um what happens when like we have choices about whether we lean into like taking a critical lens to issues or whether we just say, I know that there are issues with this, I'm going to ignore it, or I'm just going to say absolutely not. And I think about, I'm in an education space and I'm working with future therapists. And a lot of the times, people will come in with these really strong feelings of like, I love ChatGPT. I use it for everything. I'm doing everything with it. It's amazing. Or I am never going to use it. It's horrible. It kills the planet. Um, and they're it's really embracing spaces that allow us to like take that yes and of it. Where yes, it is incredibly liberative in so many ways in a world that like is fast paced and you're asked to do so many extra things and like every ounce of production is squeezed out of people. It's nice to have things that make life easier. It's not only nice, it is essential to have more space to rest, to allow for the minutia of maybe email writing or those little things to be taken care of for us. And also, we know that AI a has a much larger like water usage. It takes a ton of water to cool um, the like physical production of the materials that it produces. It takes higher fossil fuel intake. It produces more CO2. Yes. And I think that a conversation that like it parallels for me is this idea of like cars. And we know that cars use fossil fuels. We also know that our world is not built around, at least the United States is not built for people who don't use cars. And so it's like we have to decide, is something worth it in each kind of encounter? So with the car parallel, like if we can carpool, do we carpool? If something's a block away, do we walk? Yes. If I can write this documentation and I have the time and space for it, should should I write it from my own brain? Or is this something that I truly do not have the space for? And this is not going to get done if I don't use this tool? Or am I going to negatively impact my health by like stressing myself out? So it's all about, I really feel like it's all about this balance. And as we talk about like the out of session parts, I think that that's also um, an important like caveat is we're not saying like use it in sessions. We're not saying use it out of sessions. We're not saying use it for documentation. We're not saying use it to screen hiring applicants. We're not saying to use it for anything. We're saying that like in each, I say we. I don't know if Gabby and Samuel are on board with that, but personally, I feel like it's a case by case. Is there a tool that works for this? Am I comfortable with the trade-off between what I'm getting out of it and what it is extracting from artists, from the environment, from my own brain, where when I'm not flexing those muscles, I'm losing them. Um, it was a really long-winded way of transitioning into the
Yeah.
next section, but that's what.
That was a great transition.
Yeah. But I mean, what we're doing today is we're sharing what we're doing, right? I think that's what it is. And then people, and I mean, I'm certainly more than happy for people to tell me, no, you shouldn't be doing that because of this and this and this, and then I can critically think about it and then make my own decision. So I think we're just bringing examples of what we're doing, so that we can share and then sort of learn from each other. And then in that part of, out of session, I mean, for me, it's really a game changer in terms of writing emails. So I was talking about how I use it for example, now that I'm in Germany, so I write a lot of emails in German. And if I didn't have AI, then I would spend, an hour just writing one email to figure out what's the actual correct grammar that I should use, or I would just write it very wrong, and whatnot. But so it's been really, really helpful in helping me communicate and coordinate things in a language that I'm not as comfortable with. So I think those little things that you were talking about it, I mean, um, we shouldn't underestimate how much that helps in keeping us present in session, right? Because the less administrative stuff that we have to do, the less that we have to do out of session, the more time we have to actually prepare and be present when we're in sessions, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think going along with like helping with the translation, I mean, AI has already existed with like autocorrect, like even when you're texting or like when you're, typing in general or like Grammarly, things like that. Those have existed for a bit. Um, One thing I guess outside of session that has been happening for me, I think AI use also depends on if you're working in a like an institution or facility or company, what they are pushing forward or like their stance on it. So I currently work for a remote company that like has AI documentation that they just launched mm, maybe like a couple of months ago. And basically, the way it works is all these sessions are virtual, and there's like a bot note taker, and then the note taker like summarizes everything for you. However, the clients can opt out if they don't want the note taker there. Um, the facilitators or the therapist unfortunately can't. But when we actually do our documentation and see what it summarized it as, we can edit, we can choose not to use it. Because interestingly, AI doesn't really understand the creative art therapies at all. So like it'll hone in on the fact that someone requested a song like Pumped Up Kicks or something, and will say maybe something like, um, client requested to listen to the song, and this may be an indicator that they have homicidal tendencies. Is that really the case? Why did AI assume that? Because like we didn't even talk about that. We were talking about the beat or foster the people in general. Another instance, I had a client I was working with on some soundscape creation, and we were talking about sounds that are calming to us. And they said that they really like the sound of waterfalls. And I asked if they had ever seen a waterfall in person, and they said that they hadn't. And AI took that and put it as a critical note, saying that the client hasn't seen a waterfall in person, and they were talking about it, which might indicate that like um they need to really consider like what is calming and like that they what did I say earlier? I said something about like fake nature, or like yeah,
Right.
like understand the difference like can't understand the difference between like real and like fake nature sounds or something. And I'm like, this kid lives like in an area that doesn't have waterfalls. Like why is that a critical thing? Like it doesn't make any sense to me. So that's where the critical piece comes in, because like I'm literally like, honestly, it's taking a little bit more work than it is to write it my own, because like they'll write stuff down, like AI will give me something and like none of that makes sense.
And it's an auto integration. So it's not
Yeah.
like, first of all, it's using more resources to produce, which then you have to take out. And if you don't take it out, it's in something as sensitive as someone's medical documentation,
Yep.
but you can follow them. Like a note on homicidal tendencies in your medical documentation,
Yeah.
because we're using a modality that AI hasn't been really trained in, like that, that's real life repercussions for people. And
Hmm.
that to me is wild.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen or I haven't have that experience particularly, but what I've seen um, briefly for an upcoming Congress in Europe, the European Music Therapy Conference next week, has to do as well with assessment. So, um, and I think that also has to do with the way that a machine is interpreting what's happening in a session, right? So that's what you're saying about the documentation notes. And so this other assessment, I mean, of course, I don't know, I'm not the originator of this assessment, but what I understood about it is that it has to do with the microanalysis of clinical improvisations. So, I think people are trying to find ways to reduce their workload using AI. But if we think about it in a therapeutic, in a therapy process, it's less about the amount of work and it's more about the quality of it, right? And it also has to do a lot with the way you interpret things. So you cannot you as a therapist cannot outsource interpretation to anybody, not to another person, not to a machine, because it all comes from your own personal standing. Are you thinking about things psychodynamically? Are you thinking about it conductively? Are you thinking about it systemically? Right. So the moment you outsource interpretations of data and what happens in a session, the moment you stop being a therapist, right? You're just an entertainer or something, and then somebody else is doing the interpretation and the actual, processing of what's going on. That's the therapy. You're there with the person, interpreting your time together, right?
But I think that even that is subjective. And I think it's all rooted in our perspectives on therapy, because there are therapists that work in a way that their primary form of documentation, their primary form of assessing progress and value of a session is in a really quantitative lens that I do think can be made easier with AI, where you're looking at how many times does someone hit a drum? How many times, what was the volume, like what was your volume? Like those really measurable aspects. And so if that's your perspective, then I think that a lot of times those are the spaces it makes more sense. I was like, that's generally not the not my perspective in practice, not the way I tend to practice. But I think working also with students is a gift in that I get to see a lot of developing perspectives and a lot of the ways that people get to think about value in therapy. And I can understand where, when we're considering this idea of assessment and how do you know if something's working? How do you know if something is meaningful? If we're looking at isolated, concrete, quantitative measurements, then absolutely. If we're looking at it more as a process-based experience where our own understanding and our own like being in the process is important, then like Samuel said, you can't take that out of it. So I think about like it's parallels to research. Like if we think about research as a very linear way of finding out facts, then maybe AI lends itself more. If we think of it as a generative process where we're learning about ourselves and we're learning about the questions as we go and we're learning what even to ask, then maybe AI really robs us of something, robs us of our time to be and our time to really like critically examine what that like what information we're even getting.
Right. And I think also this relates to Dr. Kern's question and topic on clinical, analysis of clinical material and how did you put it? Qualitative data analysis. And I think I shared about somebody in Spain who I think has been using machine learning and AI in research and in data analysis. And this assessment I was mentioning, that I'm very curious what it's going to be like when they talk about it next week. I think it's also doing that. And I think that once you hmm, once you go there, I think that's also where it goes into, well, if AI, it has some connections to whether AI could replace certain parts of therapy or could lead to clinical goals without, say, the therapist in place. So that's projects like Match from Australia. Felicity Baker is leading that. And so, for example, that one is also an app that is using data from real life. So what people, yes, people who suffer dementia and their particular behaviors, and then it's using it to modulate music, right? So as it says, AI powered biometric driven application for signaling which music, if you scroll down a bit, which music works best and when to use it. So I'm definitely not in that field where, it's very quantitative, and then, okay, if somebody smiles 3 times, then, that's better than 4 times. No, that's better than 2 times. Because I think at the end of the day, it is that personal interpretation and the connection, that's driving change. But I think that that's where we're gonna see a lot of exciting things coming up from research and from clinical applications. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so while this one is a little bit more quantitative, there are some qualitative ways in which AI is used, especially when it comes to like thematic analysis. I am not at that point yet in my research, but I've been seeing things on like Reels or TikTok of like people using stuff like Max QDA, which basically codes stuff for you and lets you like chat with your data and like summarize things. And then there's also Atlas TI, which basically does the same thing, although it does use Chat GPT. So I don't really know how privacy is ensured through this. And then like even before like you get to the research part or to the like analysis part, I mean when you're doing your literature review, there's like things like consensus, which you can search research questions, make an outline. There's chat PDF, which obviously I've used a lot when I'm just trying to like summarize something really quick and like figure out if it's what I need. um there was also Sites, which is a like a research assistant basically, and has a lot of capabilities, but like all of these are paid. So it's like with that barrier, like how many people are using this is the question. And then two, like um what uh what is it taking away from like an actual research assistant, you know? Like um or is it taking jobs? Or I mean with like especially in the US, all of these research studies getting cut or like funding for the research studies getting cut, then like is this just the alternative that people have to use because they don't have money for research assistants, you know? Yeah.
I think also if you're looking for a free research support tool, I really like Research Rabbit. I don't know if you've played around with that
Oh
at
yeah, yeah,
all.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, but as far as like I found it really helpful to find like instead of having to search every database, every option, like it'll give you a lot more related articles. So it's kind of just one more thing to put
Mhm.
in your notes. Gabby, I don't know if you had more to say about like that research perspective, but I was kind of like thinking about the job replacement aspect that you touched on. But I don't know
Um,
if you had more.
I had just one more thing about like grants in relation to research because that was a question that was asked. For funding, I found some AI like grant writing resources, which I have not used. But there's Grant Table, Grant Orb, and Grant Boost. Again, I'm not really sure how all of these have been, if how good they are, but if you need a grant for your research, that's something to consider. Um, you're
Yeah.
welcome, Hakeem. All right. Yeah. Okay. So you can take it away.
I mean, it's really interesting, like when we're talking about like the accumulation of like funding, and using AI for that. I mean, there's so much, like there's some for folks that are working in realms that deal with insurance, like there's so many cool programs too about like using AI to support the patient experience of navigating insurance,
Mm,
which is unfortunately something that many music therapists have to navigate in a personal realm and a professional realm. But that aside, I think that this idea of like what will AI replace is important to like is important to consider because I think the initial reaction of many people is AI is replacing our jobs or AI is never going to replace our jobs. And again, I think it's a more nuanced conversation than that, where like there are levels that AI is already replacing workers at. If we think about the music industry, and we think about the people impacted, it's probably not going to be the superstars that make all of their money on touring. Like that's not going to be an AI replacement. But we think about all of the gigging musicians that work to produce jingles, who work to produce lower budget um, sound soundtracks. All of those folks, we are seeing real people lose income. And they're part of like the music community, they're part of our global community. We're also seeing jobs created by AI. So that that conversation is really important. And when we think about ourselves as therapists, I think a lot of the times, like we're working with real people who engage with the world in lots of different ways, and people are losing their jobs, and maybe they're people we're working with. Um, and I think it's also just like, can we, like, are we using AI to lessen our work or to shove more into a day and to make ourselves be able to replace more people? And I think that
mm,
that's kind of like the question that for me echoes the loudest in each aspect. Like, am I just making it so that I can shove more into a day, or am I making it so that my day is richer and I have more opportunities for rest? Or my clients doing like using AI in a way that allows them to skirt growth opportunities that they might find really meaningful when they're, working through something that's uncomfortable and working through like music creation in a way that they're learning a new skill? Or is it something that like I can let go of and they're going to direct their therapeutic growth in a way that like they see fit? So I think at each point it's like, are you using it to make your life better? Are you making using it to make the planet better? Or are you letting it drive the car?
yeah.
Right. I was thinking about this question whether AI, with AI and replacing jobs, but particularly for music therapists. Um, I don't know what's your stance on whether AI will ever replace a music therapist, but what I was thinking is that music therapy is not something that people look for anyways. It's almost something that people always accidentally stumble upon it. It's like, okay, you're in a hospital, and then a music therapist comes to you, and you never knew about it, but then, okay, sure. So, I think in that sense, we're kind of safe even because it's not that people are looking, okay, instead of a music therapist, that they would look for something else. I think that the places that we work in and the ways that we work in anyways, I don't know if you understand what I mean. On the other hand, of course, there is a whole human aspect of, okay, we're real humans, and then engaging in a therapeutic um, relationship with somebody, and then we're bringing our own understanding of so many things, and that's what's really therapeutic. But I think for me, mainly that's the main thing. So, like, for example, I work in a nursing home, and I don't know how they could get a robot that goes around and plays songs with them. And yeah.
Yeah.
On the other hand, of course, if people are looking more for private practice and they're looking for something to help them with a particular situation, whether it's somebody, a kid with disabilities, or if it's somebody who's going through a hard time and needs to process that, I think most people again find music therapy by chance, and then they're not gonna just go and then engage with a robot or with an AI tool. So I think in that sense, we're kind of safe, but I don't know what you think.
I I think that even before like the launch of like Chat GPT and like bigger AI things, people were kind of already trying or yeah, already using music therapeutically with technology. Like, I don't know. There's so many times that like I'll say that I'm a music therapist and someone on the street will be like, "Oh, I do music therapy," but really they're just making playlists, Or like you know, like using music therapeutically as opposed to like actually working with a music therapist. So I think there's kind of that conversation uh as to like how people perceive music therapy and like uh how I mean they've kind of already been like inadvertently replacing us like already just
Mhm.
by using technology things or like yeah, I don't know.
To me, like it makes me think of like the question that comes up for me is like, is there space for an abundance mindset where like
Yeah.
there's always gonna be there's always going to be a space for us, and we have already like Gabby said, there's already been shifts, there's already been changes, there are already programs run by non-music therapists that are really meaningful and have developed in all of
Yeah.
these ways. And like if we see it not as a pie where we're all like grabbing for a limited number of resources, and instead we're really like considering how cool would it be if like the participants had access to any type of support that they wanted, like whether that's therapy, which therapy isn't for everybody. Music therapy isn't for everybody. Maybe it's a different type of community support. Maybe it is more of a digital support. Maybe it is, but like if we see it less as like a scrambling for resources and more of a, we know our value. We know what we bring to the table. We're able to articulate that. And if people opt in, that's wonderful.
Hmm.
And if they don't, like other people will. That like there is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I do think that some people will say, or they think even uh, nowadays, well, why would I pay, I don't know, $50, $100 for an hour for a therapist when I can just talk to ChatGPT and it's also gonna give me some good insights. Or like you're saying, Abby, so like, oh yeah, well, I'm already using music to feel better. Why am I gonna pay you? So definitely, yes, I think we can think about it from an abundance mindset, but I think more and more conversations will come up that require us to, again, think critically and say about why is it different, right? Okay, why is seeing a music therapist different than you creating playlists by your own, or you creating your own tracks on Suno? So I think we need to have the words and the ways to talk about it. I think that's what we need.
Yeah, it's that benefit of like really understanding the alternative enough to articulate the differences. So even if you're someone who chooses not to use AI, understanding enough about AI where you can articulate your why, and you can understand your why of like, this is not something I'm going to use, or this is why, yeah. You have to know about things, like you can't just dig your head into the sand.